Now, a new telephone poll done by Rasmussen hypothetically pitted current U.S. President Barack Obama against Congressman Ron Paul in a 2012 presidential race. And the results are dead even. Obama gets 42% and Ron Paul gets 41%. And in general, there is a 3% margin of error in this poll. Now, Ron Paul is a Republican, but the Libertarian congressman is much more hardly like the majority of conservative lawmakers. Quite the opposite. He, for a long time, has been an outsider. So does this poll mean that in 2012, Ron Paul might finally get his chance? Well, to discuss it with me, I have congressional candidate from New Mexico, Adam Kokesh. Adam, thank you for joining me. Now, you yourself have been a supporter of Ron Paul's for a very long time. So what do you think it is that's happened now that he's really being accepted so much in the mainstream, which is what I think we could call this?
Well, thanks for having me, Alona. And I think as a Republican myself who has a libertarian philosophical grounding, that we are becoming a much more and more important part of the Republican Party. And I think what we're seeing, as we saw at the CPAC straw poll, as we see with this poll, that libertarian wing really is the future of the Republican Party. And as more and more people get involved in the political process who previously were shut out and really didn't have a voice, they're looking for people like myself and Ron Paul to represent them. And it's very exciting. And while you said that Ron Paul is unique among Republican congressmen on Capitol Hill, he does have some strong allies up there who are at least moving in his direction. And we see that the party as a whole, I think, is moving in his direction. It's very exciting to see. And I've seen here, too, in New Mexico's 3rd Congressional District, which I'm running to represent, that the Republican Party leadership has a severe disconnect from the base of the Republican Party. And here we have a relatively small Republican Party and a lot of independents. But when they see a candidate like myself, who is running on consistent philosophical values, that doesn't have any pet projects about big government or spending projects or my personal pork that I want to indulge in, it's bringing people back into the party. And I think that's what we're seeing. And also that for so long, Americans have been conditioned and propagandized just to live in their little bubbles and to not say anything and to just pull the lever one way or the other every 2 years, or really more likely every 4 years. And now that more and more of them are being affected by government policies and seeing that the effect of the way that the government is trampling on individual rights is coming into their bubbles, they're coming out and getting engaged, and they're looking for politicians that respect individual rights and have a philosophical consistency in their platforms.
Now, Adam, also, if we look at this, comparing both Barack Obama and Congressman Ron Paul, what's interesting here is that the poll also showed that most Americans don't agree with what they would call the political class. So at first, part of Barack Obama and his entire success was that he ran on a platform of change and was that he came across as a bit of an outsider. So do we look at this poll as the fact that Americans look at both Obama and Ron Paul still as outsiders, or do we look at this poll as Obama kind of losing a bit of his steam and now being considered, a Washington regular?
Well, Obama might have had that edge a couple of years ago, but never got any real resistance from the party establishment. And it'd be really hard to paint the current president as an outsider of any kind. But Ron Paul, when he was running for president, we saw great resistance from the political establishment, both in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and in the media. And we're being subjected to the same thing here in New Mexico. When voters see that, it usually gets their attention. It's like, well, there's a political dialogue happening among the political class, and there's one guy that's getting a lot of heat, and there's one guy that keeps getting attacked, and one guy that the establishment really doesn't like. I wonder why that is. And they go and they find out and they do their research, and it really inspires people. We've seen that here in this campaign with our volunteer base. It's now taken on a life of its own. So, Ron Paul certainly still has his outsider credentials, although that's changing as he's becoming more mainstream, but that's changing for the good because the mainstream is changing as more and more people who are shut out of the process are now getting involved because they found a voice.
Well, you could say he is becoming more mainstream, but he really does stand out amongst most of the lawmakers that are on Capitol Hill. So do you think that...
Well, hold on a second there.
Let me finish. Do you think that with, the power that he has really to get people excited, there's any chance that he could win in 2012 independently, not as a third-party candidate and not as a Republican?
Well, I would just have to say I think most of the people on Capitol Hill are outside of the mainstream when it comes to what real Americans care about and the change that real Americans want to see from our government. I think Ron Paul would have a great chance if he ran again in 2012. I hope he's up for it, and I know that he'll have a lot of support, and I would be behind him if he ran in 2012. It'd be very exciting to see. And if anything, as the government gets more burdensome and becomes more intrusive in individual rights, becomes more intrusive in the rights of people around the world as we grow the empire, and we're intervening in countries now where we have to the point where we have bases in over 700 bases in over 150 countries, and the American people realize that we're paying for that, and our economy is suffering for that, and their lives are affected by that. The broader freedom movement really grows, and Ron Paul is a unique voice for that in Washington.
All right, Adam, but you didn't answer my question. Do you think that there's any chance that Ron Paul might actually leave the Republican Party? And, you know, could he run as perhaps as a libertarian, as a third-party candidate, and still have success?
Well, the two-party system that we have, the entrenchment based on the legal structure that makes it much more difficult for third parties or independents to compete with the two major parties, would make that highly unlikely. And I'm very much against the way the current system is set up. But I think our best hope, considering that the issues that we're facing as a country right now are far more pressing than reforming the electoral process, I think our best bet of making real changes is working within the Republican Party, rebuilding it in Reagan's vision as the inclusive party of big tent, smaller government. I believe that Ron Paul is committed to that as much as I am, and is going to continue to work within the Republican Party. I hope he does so. I hope that we can join forces with people of a much broader coalition who believe in freedom and individual rights. And I think the best vehicle for that right now, the way that that's really happening, is through the Republican Party. And yes, there's going to be some resistance, and there's still a certain neoconservative element, a certain big government conservative, if you want to call it that, element that is going to resist that change. But really, the base of the Republican Party is much more in line with these views and really wants to see the Republican Party become the party of big tent, smaller government again.
All right, Adam Kokesh, thank you very much for catching up with us, and good luck on your campaign. It's a new Rasmussen poll in which American voters right now have put Barack Obama and Ron Paul dead even if the 2012 election were to take place today.